What's up, YouTube? Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, my name's Troy. I'm a health coach. I help people integrate their nutrition into their life. I'm a mindful outdoor guide. I help people connect with nature in a way that feels right for them. And I'm a former fat guy. I've lost over 100 pounds. And the reason I started this channel is to, before I leave this earth, pass on some of the things that I've learned along the way. I did that 20 years ago, and since then it's become my passion to talk to everybody that I meet about what's going well for them, what they do. And I've learned a lot, my own understanding of things, the things that I believe to be true. A lot of that has changed over the course of, my education around health and wellness. And this channel is about holding space to share some of that information. So I'd love to hear what's going well for you in the comments. And today we're going to talk about 3 paths to weight loss. They are tried and true, tested, they work. And there's a lot of really well-meaning sort of bad information out there. In other words, let's say you've been trying to lose some weight now for a while, you've been struggling with that. I'm sure you've come across the old advice of just eat less and move more, right? But the problem with that is, how long can you do that for, right? Before you give up, probably about 3 days, right? Like, I don't know anyone who can just continue to just eat less and move more. So everybody's a little bit different in terms of what works best for them. But I'm going to give you 3 things to try. If you're new to this, they'll work. Tried, true, tested. Before we get started, small ask. Take a second to smash that subscribe button. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it really means the world to me. So, first thing, let's call it calorie tracking. What we're tracking is how many calories we're taking in. It's going to require some math. It's going to require reading nutrition labels. It's going to require, there's apps for this nowadays too, but what you're tracking is calories. What you're tracking it against is how many calories you need for maintenance, just to maintain your body weight, just to maintain life. It's based on your size and your activity level. And so there should be like a number that you get. If you look it up, I'm sure you could just do a Google search on this. And so like, let's say that mine is 1,500 calories a day for maintenance. That means I eat 1,500 calories. I don't lose weight. I don't gain weight. Now, if I'm doing the calorie tracking method, what I would do is every time I ate something, I would track it somehow, write it down in a little notebook or something. Or many people use an app for this these days. So you put it into the app. I eat a couple of gummy bears, I put it into the app. I drink a half a soda, whatever it is, I put it into the app. I eat a cheeseburger, I put it into the app. And then what I do is I make sure that I eat a little bit less in terms of calories than what I need for maintenance. And that works for people no matter what they eat. There have been very interesting studies where people have eaten things like that you wouldn't consider to be health food typically, right? There was one, it was called the Twinkie diet. And the guy ate Twinkies only, but he lost weight and his and health biomarkers improved because of the weight loss. And he did it eating only Twinkies, but he kept his calories a little bit under maintenance, so he lost weight because of that. And there have been several of these where people have eaten various foods, and that's the deal, guys. Calories are king. So if you track them, and you can't eyeball it, that's where calorie tracking goes off the rails, when you try to eyeball stuff, because we tend to overestimate the amount of food that we need for maintenance. We think that we need more than we really need. And so that's why you got to weigh, you got to measure, you need to get a food scale. Like I said, they have apps now, but it's going to require paying attention. It's going to require tracking, a little bit of math. People who enjoy, data will appreciate this method, and I recommend this method to anyone who is new because I found it to be very enlightening when I, you know, when my coach tells me, hey, you know what, eat a half a cup of XYZ oatmeal, whatever it is. What I picture in my mind is, the cup from the cabinet in the kitchen that's the size of a bucket. So I think, oh yeah, just half of that small bucket there is my half cup. And when you actually use measuring cups and food scales, you may find that you're surprised as to what actual portion sizes look like. I know that I was, and so that's the benefit of doing this, especially for beginners. But I don't feel like it's something that you can do long term. So that's the downside of it. Like, do you want to weigh and track and write down and enter into the app every single thing that you eat, which is what you have to do to be successful at this? Do you want to do that for the rest of your life? So I don't. It drives me crazy in the short term. So that's why this method I think is really good for learning, but it's hard to do for the long term. It will work. And the one other downside of this method, particularly when I talk about, oh yeah, I do the Twinkie method or the McDonald's method, I don't recommend that. But and the reason I really don't recommend it, aside from the potential health things, like if you were trying to get as jacked as possible, I wouldn't, the Twinkie diet, it wouldn't make any sense. But how hungry are you going to be when you can only have, right, my 1,500 calories? When we look at that in Twinkies, it's not a whole lot of food. If we looked at that in terms of, fruit and vegetables and lean meats, it would be a big pile of food that I could eat so I could feel full. And hunger. So hunger is one of the things. It's one of the two things that makes it really hard for people to be successful. And it's not fair because different people have different levels of what we could call food drive, or really just like how hungry do you feel. So there are those types of people who can have a chip and then walk away. But I'm not that type of person. If I have one chip, it activates something in me where I have to eat the whole bag. And I feel like a lot of people are like that, particularly people who struggle to lose weight. So the person who's saying, oh, just eat less and move more, I'd be willing to bet that that person has probably not struggled with weight loss. And it's very possible that they have a different experience in terms of things like food drive, those hunger levels. So when you take your calories below maintenance level, you feel it. And you feel it as hunger. And some people feel it as intense hunger. And it's one of the downsides to the calorie tracking method. But if you track your calories, you add them up, you keep them below maintenance, you do that over time, you will lose weight. Next, you may have heard of intermittent fasting, or what we could refer to it generally as time-restricted eating. This also works. Now, who is this good for? This is good for people who aren't hungry for breakfast. They don't like to eat breakfast. You're like me. You don't have a whole lot of time in the morning. And so you skip it. And by skipping it, what you do is you create a period in time where you're not eating. Or if you wanted to look at it a different way, you could say, okay, I'm going to eat during this period, certain period of time. And we could refer to that as your eating window. And then on the other side of the eating window, you have your fasted window. And so the idea behind time-restricted eating is to shrink the eating window. And what I do is I typically eat one meal a day. And I think that this is really good for busy people. I think that this typically is good for men. And I like it because I get to eat fresh food. I get to make my food at the end of the day. I eat fresh food. I do that once, and that's what I need for me. Now, this isn't for everybody. Typically, I find that women don't get the same type of benefit that men get from this style of eating. I think that if you wanted to build as much muscle as possible, if your goal was to get as jacked as possible, I wouldn't recommend this method of eating. I would say, get, at least 3 or 4 meals in a day. But but this works for some. All right, intermittent fasting, or what we could call time restricted eating. Many people find that by cutting off food prior to bedtime, like a few hours prior to bedtime, if you've ever heard of the 3-2-1 rule, no food 3 hours prior to bed, no liquid 2 hours prior to bed, no screens 1 hour prior to bed. And so, some of the old school bodybuilders in the past, let's say that you like to eat breakfast. You get up at 5 in the morning, let's say, 6 o'clock, you have breakfast. 7, 8, 9, have another meal. 10, 11, 12, have another meal. 1, 2, 3, have your final meal around 3 or 4. And, you've spaced out every few hours, getting a little protein meal there. And then if you stop eating by 4 o'clock, right, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you go to bed, and then you have that fasted period while you're sleeping. You're still doing the intermittent fasting. You're still doing the time restricted thing, and I've heard that there's a lot of benefits of doing that, so that you go into your sleep period, really well fasted. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I notice that sometimes when I do that, I feel great, and there could be hormonal reasons that this occurs. But it's up to you. Some people want to eat before bed. I like to have a snack before bed, and you can still do the method that way also. Finally, is what we'll call a elimination style diet. So this is where you eliminate a certain food group. Now, an example of this would be vegans. Vegans eliminate animal products. Or let's say you are a carnivore style, or an Atkins style, where you eliminate carbohydrate products. Or maybe you do the paleo, where you eliminate products that weren't available to cavemen, or whatever it is. Some people are sensitive to dairy or wheat or certain food products, where when the person eliminates that thing, they make great progress because of that. So we could call that the elimination style. Now, I gave you 3. Everybody's a little bit different. You can use a combination of these 3 methods like I do. Now, tracking my calories would drive me crazy. I don't do it, but I've used it, right? I've done the thing with the food scale and the measuring cups, and making sure and learning about what those portion sizes look like. And the way that I do my tracking around calories now is I pretty much eat the same thing all the time. And if I'm not losing or gaining weight doing that, and I'm doing the same exact thing all the time, then I can make adjustments from there. If I'm like, I feel a little soft. I got a little body fat going. I've gained a little weight on the scale. Well, then I'll just scale back a little bit. I eat the same thing every day. I'll eat a little bit less cheese. I'll eat a little bit less fruit. I'll eat a little bit less dairy. I'll cut my carbs back a little bit, because I make sure to eat plenty of carbs, so that if I have to make adjustments, it's easy for me to do that without really feeling it too much. Because remember, the calorie restriction stuff for people with a really high food drive like I have, and like you have if you're overweight, well, then you got to find a way to manage that. Dropping your calories down too low can be hard. It can really affect you psychologically, and it can have a sort of backlash effect. But that's just me. That's how I use it. I told you guys how I use the time restricted eating. I eat 1 meal a day because it's easy for my life. And finally, the elimination. I really try to keep as much in my diet as I can, including, junk food, and, what we can call, sort of like treat foods and stuff like that. But in terms of eliminating, I try to eliminate alcohol. I try to eliminate certain trigger foods that I know are really a sabotage for me. Like I said, some people can eat the chip and just walk away. But for me, there are certain foods where once I start, I can't stop. And I know that they are what we could refer to as a trigger, or I know that, by eating these foods, they're not really fueling my purpose. They're not helping me. They're not, they're not really providing me with energy. They're not helping me get more jacked. It's probably something that I'm better off, just avoiding. So for me, with certain foods, abstinence can be easier than moderation. But that's just my thoughts, guys. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching the video. We'll see you in the next one. Peace. Peace.